Stop. Listen. Pay attention. Chosen one. This is not an ordinary message, and you cannot afford to scroll past it without awareness. The weight you've been carrying, the tension in your chest, the fatigue in your limbs, the quiet confusion in your mind. It is not random. It is deliberate. It is noticed. And it is time to understand what has been happening around you, unseen, yet intimate in every way that touches your life. You may have felt it for days, weeks, or months, that subtle exhaustion that seems to linger even after rest. The kind that makes small decisions feel monumental. The kind that makes the hours blur together, leaving you uncertain whether the struggle is outside of you or inside. That is precisely why this moment matters. You are being addressed directly. Not as a general audience, not as a possibility, not as someone watching from the sidelines. This is for you. Right now, you might be thinking that your fatigue is a sign of weakness, that the pressure you feel signals failure or inadequacy. That sense of isolation, the quiet moments where no one seems to notice, where the world continues. While you feel suspended, those moments are part of the picture. They are not a flaw. They are a symptom, a signal, a marker of the path you are walking. And the explanation is far more deliberate than you suspect. Chosen one. There is clarity available to you, though it will not arrive as a sudden rush or a loud declaration. It will arrive as recognition, as understanding, as a sense that the confusion, the heaviness, the invisible tug at your energy, all of it has meaning. And in that recognition, you will find a stability you have been operating with without conscious awareness. This message reaches you now because timing matters. The conditions you've experienced were not coincidental. Your environment, your challenges, the inner weight you've carried. They have been coordinated in subtle ways to shape what is emerging in you. And yet you are still here. You are still functional. You are still noticing, still breathing, still moving through your world. That is not trivial. It is intentional. Stay with me, because what you are about to hear is meant to explain not only the reality of what you have endured, but the structure of how you endured it. There is a framework, a logic, a sequence in the pressure you felt. And understanding it will allow you to see your own strength in a way that has remained hidden until now. This is personal. This is for you. And it begins with a recognition. The fire you walked through, though unseen, left you intact. The certainty of your presence now is proof of a protection that was quietly active even when the world seemed unaware. You are ready to see this clearly. You are not wondering if this message is for you anymore. That hesitation, the quiet question of "does this apply to me?" is already dissolving. This is how you know. This message does not hover around you. It lands. It settles into your awareness without force. That alone is a marker. Chosen one. This is not about assigning you a title to make you feel elevated. It is about naming a function you have already been performing. You did not step into this identity by choice or ambition. You were already moving through life carrying a certain weight, absorbing certain pressures, responding to situations with a steadiness that surprised even you. That did not happen by accident. This message is for you, because what occurred involved you directly. The pressure was not theoretical. It was not symbolic. It was lived. You felt it in your body, in your sleep patterns, in your ability to focus. And yet you did not collapse. You did not lose coherence. You did not fragment the way many people do under far less strain. That matters. There is something important to understand here. Your strength did not activate in response to the pressure. It was already present. The resistance you demonstrated was not a heroic effort or a dramatic stand. It was automatic, almost boring in its consistency. While part of you felt confused, tired, or unsure, another part of you remained stable, observant, grounded. That split is significant. Most people experience stress as a full system takeover. Their thinking narrows. Their emotions spike. Their behavior becomes reactive. You experienced the pressure, but it did not own you. You stayed functional. You showed up. You kept moving even when the internal noise suggested you shouldn't. That is not common, and it is not something learned quickly. Chosen one. This is why ambiguity must be removed now. This message is not for those who collapsed, completely lost awareness, or surrendered their sense of self to the pressure. It is for the one who stayed present while being tested, the one who questioned internally, but remained outwardly coherent, the one who endured without needing constant reassurance or validation. You may not have consciously recognized your own stability because you were inside the experience. But stability does not announce itself. It simply holds. And you were held by something internal, structured, and reliable. This is the identity being clarified. Not someone becoming strong, but someone realizing they already were. Not someone chosen because of future potential, but someone confirmed because of how they already moved through unseen fire without losing themselves. And now, with ambiguity removed, you are ready to understand what that pressure actually was, and why your response to it reveals far more than you've been told. Notice the subtle signals you've been feeling, those persistent tensions, the restless energy, the moments when your mind raced without clear reason. For most people, these are nuisances, distractions, or even faults. You have been trained, whether consciously or unconsciously, to interpret them as errors, evidence of insufficiency, or signs that something is broken inside you. That judgment has been heavy. That self-questioning has been exhausting. And yet, you have navigated through it. Chosen one. The truth is that what you have felt is not a flaw. It is a signal. A marker that your system, body, mind, and attention is adjusting to conditions outside normal awareness. The tension you carry is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of sensitivity to forces, patterns, and shifts that others rarely perceive. The fatigue, the confusion, the pressure, they are all indicators, not verdicts. Consider this: every physical sensation, every emotional fluctuation, every moment of mental strain has been a message coded into your experience. Your heart racing during certain interactions, your energy dipping without obvious reason, your thoughts looping in tight circles. All of these are notifications that the environment around you has been applying subtle pressure. And yet, despite these signals, you maintained a level of coherence. You stayed functional. You moved through your day. You performed. This reframing matters because it removes self-blame. You were not overreacting. You were not failing. You were not unfit. You were receiving information in real time, and your system was calibrating without your conscious intervention. The moments that felt chaotic or confusing were actually part of a transition, a structural shift in the way your awareness and resilience operate. It is tempting to interpret these symptoms as personal shortcomings. But chosen one, they are not. They are markers of a deeper alignment, of an unconscious intelligence maintaining stability amid forces that operate below ordinary perception. Your body and mind were responding automatically, keeping you grounded, while the external conditions tried to create imbalance. Notice how rare this is. Most people interpret such signals as reasons to retreat, to seek distraction, or to question themselves endlessly. You interpreted them as reality to navigate. Not perfectly, not always consciously, but enough to maintain function, enough to keep moving, enough to remain present when others might have faltered. This reframing prepares you for the next layer, the fact that what pressed upon you was not random. It was coordinated. It was intentional. It had structure, timing, and purpose. And through it all, your stability remained intact, unnoticed, but real. Chosen one, this is the beginning of seeing your experience as a signal rather than a problem. A prelude to understanding the unseen forces that you navigated without being consumed. What you were responding to was not imaginary, and it was not internal chaos generating itself. There was pressure, real pressure. Subtle, persistent, and structured. Not dramatic, not theatrical, just present and recent. Chosen one. This pressure did not arrive all at once. It layered itself into your days, into timing, into interactions, into moments where things felt slightly heavier than they should have been. Conversations that drained you faster than usual. Tasks that required more energy than their actual weight justified. Periods where your focus narrowed not because you were failing, but because something was compressing your bandwidth. This was not an attack in the way people imagine attacks. There was no spectacle, no crisis, no single moment you could point to and say, that was it. Instead, it was coordinated subtlety. A convergence of small pressures applied consistently enough to test stability without announcing themselves. That is how you know it was intentional. Random stress is loud and chaotic. This was quiet and precise. Timing matters here. This pressure coincided with a phase where you were already transitioning internally. You were becoming more aware, more discerning, more selective, even if you didn't yet have language for it. Pressure often appears at those moments, not to destroy, but to measure. And the measurement was simple. Would you fragment or would you hold? You held. Not by force, not by resistance. You did not fight anything consciously. You adapted. You adjusted your pace. You stayed present. You continued to function. That is the detail most people miss. You were tired, but not disoriented. Stretched, but not lost. Under strain, but still yourself. That distinction is critical. Many people collapse internally under far less. They lose emotional regulation. They become reactive. They abandon clarity. You did not. Even when you questioned yourself, there was a part of you observing the questioning. Even when you felt pressure, there was a part of you that remained steady enough to keep moving. That is not accidental. This pressure was structured around everyday life. Work, relationships, solitude, waiting, delay. Nothing dramatic enough to justify alarm, but enough to test coherence. Enough to see whether your internal structure was stable without reinforcement. And it was. Chosen one. The fact that you remained functional is the evidence, not productive in a performative way. Functional in a grounded way. You did not disappear. You did not unravel. You did not become someone else. You stayed you even while carrying more than was visible. That is the reveal. Not that pressure existed, but that it failed to destabilize you. Quietly, without announcement, without witnesses. And now that you can see the pressure for what it was, you are ready to understand how it applied itself point by point, and why each point failed to break your internal balance. Continue. The pressure did not arrive as one force. It distributed itself. It tested different points of your internal structure, not all at once, but in sequence. This is why it felt confusing at times. You were not dealing with a single problem. You were moving through a system of pressure points, each designed to see whether you would destabilize, overcorrect, or abandon your center. You did none of those. The first pressure point was doubt. Not loud doubt. Not dramatic questioning. It was subtle erosion. Small thoughts suggesting that your pace was wrong, that your direction was unclear, that others seemed to move more easily than you. This kind of doubt is dangerous because it masquerades as realism. But notice what happened. You questioned, yes, but you did not spiral. The doubt passed through you without rewriting your identity. You remained intact. The second pressure point was fear, but not panic. It was anticipatory tension. A low-level sense that something could go wrong, that stability might be temporary, that you needed to stay alert. For many people, this kind of fear hijacks the nervous system. It creates hypervigilance or shutdown. In you, it did neither. You felt the tension, but you did not become controlled by it. Your decisions remained measured. Your awareness stayed wide enough to function. The third pressure point was energy drain. This one was physical and emotional. You noticed yourself tiring faster. Social interactions felt heavier. Even silence carried weight. This is often where people collapse, where motivation disappears and disengagement sets in. But you adapted. You did not force productivity. You adjusted your rhythm. You conserved energy without withdrawing from life. That is regulation, not resignation. The fourth pressure point was isolation. Not literal isolation, but internal solitude. Moments where you felt unseen, unmirrored, unsupported. This is a critical test because isolation often triggers overreaching or self-erasure. You did neither. You stayed present with yourself. You did not rush to fill the silence with noise or validation. You allowed the solitude without letting it define you. That shows internal anchoring. The fifth pressure point was delay. Things did not move when you expected them to. Responses slowed. Progress felt suspended. For many, delay creates agitation, impulsive decisions, or despair. In you, it created tension, yes, but also patience. Not passive waiting, but restrained movement. You did not abandon your direction just because timing resisted you. You stayed aligned without forcing outcomes. Each of these pressure points mirrors common psychological stressors: doubt, fear, fatigue, isolation, delay. None of them were extraordinary on their own. What is extraordinary is how you moved through all of them without losing coherence. You did not become reactive. You did not fragment into extremes. You did not abandon yourself to cope. Notice what you did instead. You regulated internally. You allowed sensations without assigning catastrophic meaning to them. You adjusted behavior without rewriting identity. You stayed functional without needing external reinforcement. This is not accidental. It is evidence of a stable internal structure that operates even when conscious certainty wavers. You may not have named this at the time. You may have simply thought you were enduring, surviving, getting through. But endurance without distortion is not common. Most endurance comes at the cost of self-connection. Yours did not. You stayed yourself under pressure. That is the defining detail. Chosen one. This breakdown is not meant to glorify struggle. It is meant to clarify what actually happened. The pressure tested multiple points. None of them caused collapse. That is the confirmation. And now, with the pressure points visible and understood, you are in a position to review what occurred with clarity rather than confusion, and to recognize that what carried you through was not luck, but a coherence already built into you. Take a moment now to reflect on the full picture. Chosen one. Look back on the sequence you just traced: doubt, fear, energy drain, isolation, delay. Each was present. Each demanded attention. Each carried the potential to disrupt. And yet you moved through them, functionally, calmly, without fracturing your awareness. This is not coincidence. It is not chance. It is not a product of luck or timing. What you experienced was a calibration, a revealing of internal consistency under conditions designed to test it. And in reviewing it, you see the pattern: when pressure was applied, you remained anchored. When delay threatened agitation, you remained patient. When isolation suggested despair, you maintained connection with yourself. That coherence is measurable in the outcomes. Continued present sustained action, mental clarity, emotional regulation. Notice how this differs from typical human experience. Most people under the same pressures would have experienced compounding stress. Doubt leads to fear. Fear leads to impulsive action, energy drain, leads to disengagement. Isolation amplifies self-criticism, and delay triggers agitation. What would be expected is cascade collapse or reactive improvisation. Not in you. You interrupted that cascade. You maintained equilibrium. This reflection is not about pride. It is about recognition. Recognition of what is already built into you. Recognition that your system is coherent, reliable, and resistant to breakdown in ways most people never encounter. That is a subtle but crucial insight. Your resilience is not reactive. It is not learned from this moment. It has been present all along. What you experienced simply revealed it. Look at the practical details. You continued to perform responsibilities. You engaged in interactions with clarity. You made decisions without being hijacked by fluctuating emotional states. You processed information, solved problems, and maintained presence, even when external signals suggested otherwise. That is coherence. That is internal stability, functioning as it was designed. Chosen one. In this review, you may notice a quiet satisfaction or relief. That is appropriate. But let it be grounded, not inflated. You are not invincible. You are not impervious to all pressure. What is important is that you did not falter under conditions that would overwhelm most. You did not abandon function. You did not lose your identity in the process. That is the data. That is the truth. As you reflect, allow yourself to internalize one central reality. Your stability is reliable. Your coherence is present. Your internal structure is measurable by your capacity to navigate multiple stressors simultaneously without collapse. It is not perfect. It is not heroic. It is consistent. And that is rare even without being extraordinary. This review is a bridge. It transitions you from observation to understanding, from experiencing pressure to comprehending your response, from moving through uncertainty to recognizing your baseline capacity. And as you stand in that clarity, you are prepared to see how uncommon this steadiness truly is compared to ordinary human experience. Chosen one. You are now ready to see your stability in context, to appreciate its rarity without needing to inflate or exalt it, and to recognize what it reveals about the structure of who you are. Chosen one, consider the ordinary human reaction to pressure. Most people experience moments of strain and immediately feel destabilized. Their focus narrows, their emotions spike, their energy falters. Even minor stress can ripple through thinking behavior and interaction. That is typical. That is expected. That is the baseline for most. Now compare that to how you moved. Doubt surfaced. Fatigue emerged. Isolation pressed. Delay lingered. Yet you did not collapse. You did not overreact. You did not abandon presence. You remained functional, coherent, and responsive. Not perfectly, not without effort, but enough to maintain internal continuity, decision-making capacity, and emotional balance. That is uncommon. It is uncommon, not exceptional. There is no need to inflate your experience into heroism. This is not about superiority or comparison. It is simply a marker of rarity that under a confluence of ordinary pressures amplified by subtle coordination, you stayed yourself. That is notable precisely because it is infrequent. Many under far less strain fracture into reactive patterns. They abandon clarity for immediate relief. They misinterpret signals. They overcorrect or underperform. What you did was different. You stayed calibrated. You observed internal sensations without being consumed by them. You adjusted your behavior without abandoning your baseline. That is the measure of rare steadiness. Notice how this informs your identity. Chosen one. It does not make you invulnerable. It does not remove future pressure. It does not grant immunity to chaos or complexity. What it does do is show that your baseline operation includes a capacity for coherence under conditions that destabilize most. That is the insight. That is the rarity. It is important to frame this correctly. Rarity does not equal superiority. It does not demand recognition. It simply exists as a fact about how your system operates. Your resilience is present, reliable, and measurable through your capacity to maintain function without being hijacked by transient pressures. By understanding this comparison, you gain perspective. You gain calibration. You see that your experience is not ordinary. Not in the sense of flashy or dramatic, but in the subtle, quiet measure of maintaining yourself amid conditions designed to test. You can now observe yourself without judgment, without ego, and without fear, recognizing that what you navigated is uncommon, but not exaggerated. Chosen one. With this perspective, you are prepared to understand the source of your coherence, not as something activated in moments of trial, but as a baseline feature of your structure, waiting quietly, always present, whether noticed or not. Chosen one. It is time to clarify what this stability truly represents. Your strength is not an emergency measure. It is not something you summon only when under duress. It is a baseline. It is built into the structure of how you operate. You did not create it overnight, and it was not activated by pressure. It has been present all along. This baseline is the product of internal preparation, maturity, and coherence. You have spent years consciously or unconsciously developing the capacity to regulate emotion, process information, and maintain presence under varied conditions. That capacity is reliable because it is structural, not reactive. It does not depend on willpower or circumstance. It is part of how you function as a whole system. Notice how this reframes your previous experience. What may have felt like extraordinary endurance or miraculous ability to persist is simply the expression of a system working as it was designed. You did not have to push yourself beyond normal limits to survive the pressures applied. You simply operated within the structure already present, which allowed you to remain coherent, attentive, and functional. Chosen one. This clarification matters. It prevents misattribution of your experience to random luck, external intervention, or extraordinary intervention. Your stability is your own. It is reliable. It is present in ordinary moments as well as in times of stress. It is a foundation, not a response. It is also adaptive. Because it is built into your structure, it adjusts naturally to incoming pressures. Fatigue, doubt, delay, isolation. These do not destabilize you because your internal coherence is the baseline. You do not need to overcorrect, overthink, or overperform. You simply navigate. You process. You integrate. You hold your ground without conscious effort. This does not mean you are impervious to life's challenges. It does not mean pressure cannot accumulate, or that you are free from the need for rest, discernment, or care. It simply means that your baseline capacity is already sufficient to navigate moments that would unsettle many others. That recognition is empowering because it shifts perspective from reactive survival to steady presence. By anchoring your identity in this clarity, chosen one, and you now understand that your coherence is inherent, reliable, and not conditional. It exists regardless of circumstance. It is a constant you can reference, rely upon, and integrate into your daily life. And now, with this identity firmly in place, you are prepared to apply practical orientation, concrete ways to maintain and integrate this awareness into every aspect of your daily existence, ensuring that this coherence continues to serve you effectively. Chosen one, now it is time to integrate this awareness into the practical rhythm of your life. Stability, clarity, and coherence are not abstract concepts, they are operational realities. You can honor them, nurture them, and allow them to guide how you engage with the world without creating tension or forcing effort. Begin with rest, not as an indulgence, but as a foundational practice. Your system has been carrying more than is visible, adjusting constantly. Give it periods of deliberate pause. Sleep quiet moments or simple disengagement from tasks are not wasted time, they are calibration. They allow your baseline stability to continue functioning without erosion. Next, cultivate discernment. Pay attention to the pressures that arise, but observe them as signals rather than threats. Doubt, fatigue, delay, isolation, these are not indicators of failure. They are informational markers. They tell you where adjustment is needed, not where collapse is imminent. By interpreting them correctly, you maintain clarity without being consumed. Boundaries are essential. You do not need to absorb everything. External energy, emotional demands, and overstimulation can erode coherence if unregulated. Set limits gently, not defensively. Protect your attention. Protect your rhythm. This is not avoidance. It is structural preservation. Patience is another practical perspective. Not passive waiting, but measured engagement with processes that unfold over time. You have already demonstrated the capacity to maintain coherence under delay. Expand this into conscious practice. Allow timing to operate naturally. Resist the urge to force outcomes. Focus deliberately, yet lightly. You have already maintained function under pressure unconsciously. Now you can apply that focus intentionally. Attend to priorities without attachment to results. Observe, act, and release. Let the baseline stability be the canvas upon which deliberate action is painted. Finally, integrate awareness into daily life. Notice subtle sensations, emotional fluctuations, and mental patterns without judgment. Recognize them as markers of your system at work. Respond with measured attention. Allow your internal coherence to guide decisions, not external pressure. Chosen one. These practical perspectives are not prescriptions for performance or heroism. They are invitations to integrate awareness, honor your system, and maintain the functionality you have already demonstrated. By doing so, you translate quiet stability into conscious presence, ensuring your structure remains intact while navigating daily life. This orientation does not require drama, urgency, or hypervigilance. It requires calm attention, reflection, and deliberate choice. And through these choices, you solidify what you have already been living: a coherent, resilient, grounded presence that can move through life without fracturing under pressure. With these principles in place, chosen one, you are ready to receive closure, reassurance, and affirmation, an acknowledgement of what you have endured and the stability you carry forward. Chosen one. Now allow yourself to settle into the certainty of what you have just recognized. You walked through pressures, through fatigue, through subtle tests of your coherence, and you emerged intact.